Mean Old Lion Media presents Corner Table Talk.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Corner Table Talk. I am your host, Brad Johnson. Here we are exploring subjects related to food plus drink plus culture. And as always, with questions or comments about our show, you can reach me at brad@postandbeamhospitality.com. So Andy Warhol, who carried his Polaroid camera everywhere he went, once said about photographs, quote, "The best thing about a picture is that it never changes, even when the people in it do," end quote. The groundbreaking and legendary photojournalist and filmmaker Gordon Parks said, quote, "The subject matter is so much more important than the photographer," end quote. Well, my guest today may have some feelings about those two sentiments. Andrew Bernstein is recognized as an all-star in sports photography. The Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame named him a 2018 Curt Gowdy Award recipient, acknowledging his contributions to basketball media. Andy, as he is often called, is the official photographer for the LA Lakers, Clippers, Kings, and Sparks, as well as the official photographer for Staples Center, now the Crypto.com Arena and Microsoft Theater. I'm going to get stuck on that crypto thing. It's still Staples to me, but I don't want to get Andy in trouble with his employer, so I'll try to use the proper name, but Staples just conjures up a lot for me. He is in his 33rd consecutive season, serving as the longest tenured NBA League photographer. He's been the selected home team photographer for numerous NBA championship games. In fact, he has covered 40 NBA Finals and 38 All-Star games as the senior NBA photographer. His portfolio includes hockey, the Olympics, rock stars, and so much more. But I think his passion it's safe to say, is basketball. In 2018, Andy collaborated with five-time NBA champion, the legendary Kobe Bryant, on the worldwide best-selling book, The Mamba Mentality, How I Play, which is a look back through Andy's lens at Kobe's 20-year career. Andy's unique rapport with the icons of sports he photographs have afforded him an unparalleled access and lasting friendships. He is the host of the podcast Legends of Sport, which can be found on iHeart and YouTube. It is such an honor to have as a guest today a star amongst stars, Andy Bernstein. Andy, welcome to Corner Table Talk.
Well, Brad, it's so great to, first of all, see you again. I haven't seen you in I don't know how long, man, and I miss you. I know you moved back east, and it's just great to connect, and I love what you're doing on the podcast. Thank you for that wonderful intro. Appreciate that.
Oh, my pleasure, man. Yeah, thank you too, Andy. Yeah, it's been a couple of years, man. We left LA in 2019 and haven't been to a game since. So, yeah, I'm used to seeing you not too far away. So, Andy, we kick things off with what I call our short order questions, just a couple of things to get us rolling. So I'll fire a few of those at you. So tell me, what is in heavy rotation on your playlist? What music are you listening to these days?
That's an easy question, man. I'm a Springsteen fanatic. I won't say fan. I will say fanatic, nut, whatever. This is where I am right now. We're recording kind of my sports area, but if you went on the other side of the wall, it would be an homage to the boss. Photos and all kinds of stuff from my 40 plus years of following him. So I got a lot of Bruce on the playlist. I also have a 13-year-old daughter who's exposing me to some wonderful music. She happened to have been in a Billie Eilish video, which was amazing, with her choir that she sings with. So, I'm getting kind of the best of both worlds, but I'm kind of a classic rock guy when it comes down to it, and throw in a little disco every once in a while to, keep the heart pumping.
A little disco.
Oh, yeah.
That's great. Did you happen to catch any of Springsteen and Barack Obama's podcasts or conversations on Spotify?
Oh, absolutely. I gobbled it up. I think it was 6, I believe. And my sister bought me the wonderful book, which I'm going to plug. I have nothing to do with this book, but I absolutely love it. There's a book about the podcast and about their relationship. Wonderful, wonderful book with amazing photos. I mean, Barack Obama's personal photographer in the White House. Pete Souza is represented there. Danny Clinch, all my friends who have been shooting Bruce, since the beginning of time. It's a great tribute to both of them, and the fact that they had this friendship and bonding is unique, but it's not that unique when you really listen and you see where these guys came from and what they're all about.
No, not at all, man. And I just felt such a connection to the periods of time they talked about, the Barack listing his playlist with songs that I loved, and just the things that they had in common. It was really a cool bond and great conversations to hear those guys together. Tell me, Andy, what's your morning routine?
Well, we have an 8th grader, so got to get up for her in the morning, usually around 6:30, up and at 'em. And she's pretty self-sufficient. Our little Mimi, she takes care of herself, gets her lunch ready for school. But got to have that first cup of coffee to just get functioning. Usually watch the Today Show every morning, catch up on the headlines and stuff. I live in Southern California, so even this time of year, it's gorgeous outside. The sun is coming up. And get a little time with my wife in the morning to just catch up on stuff. She's a lawyer, so she's getting ready for work. Finally back in the office after, I think she was probably 18 months out of the office, working from home. My stepdaughter is a PhD student at USC, so she's home living with us right now. So it's a little chaotic, but wonderful family time in the morning. And then I usually get myself together after everybody leaves, and I'm at my office where I am now. It's a couple of miles from my house. I'm usually here by about 9:30.
Nice, man. It sounds a little chaotic, but family chaos in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you and your wife have a favorite LA restaurant?
Yeah, that's a great question. We love the restaurant called the Raymond in Pasadena. It's a beautiful restaurant.
Sure. Legendary.
Yeah, it's an old Craftsman house. It's sort of carved into, I think it's like carved into sort of a freeway off ramp almost, But it's a little hideaway, wonderful bar, wonderful restaurant. Paul Martin's was here. We like Paul Martin's, but they've unfortunately closed. But Gaucho Grill is open in Pasadena, which is wonderful. There's a few other ones that we've been to. I really like Javier's in Century City. That's a great place to have a lunch meeting, and it's kind of open air, which is kind of helpful in our times of COVID. And we bounce around from restaurant to restaurant, but those are kind of the go-to ones.
Nice. Well, Raymond's might have been around when you were in school in Pasadena, although you might not have had the discretionary income.
Exactly. Yeah. The restaurant we used to go to at Art Center in Pasadena was called Ernie's Jr.'s Tacos. Right. There's still an Ernie's Jr. I think in Studio City or Burbank. I went there a few weeks ago. But it literally was the only restaurant in what's now called Old Pasadena, Old Town, which was really a depressing area when I was in school in the mid to late 70s, quite honestly. But it's been completely redone. The same developer that developed the 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica developed it. And the Pasadena Historical Society insisted that one of the caveats was that they had to keep the facades of all the original buildings, and they cleaned them up, and they're beautiful. And so it looks like old Pasadena, but once you go in a restaurant or into a store, obviously it's modern and it's wonderful. It's a wonderful area. But like I said, we had that one joint that we would go to for lunch. You get like a taco lunch for like $3.50, with a soda. That's pretty much it.
When we used to drink soda.
Yeah.
Right. That's great.
Yeah.
So tell me, Andy, 40 championship games, almost as many all-star games. This may be tough for you, but can you recall the greatest game that you've worked?
Well, the greatest game, Brad, and I don't know if you were there. I think you were there in your normal seat, but it has to be Kobe's final game, August 13th, 2016. Mamba drops 60 points, drops the mic, Mamba out, and that was the end of that 20-year career. But I can't imagine, yes, it wasn't a finals game. Didn't mean anything, quite frankly, the standings or anything. But having been around him, with him, embedded with him for 20 years, to see him, that exclamation point on his career. I mean, we're in Hollywood. You spent a lot of time in Hollywood. Nobody in anywhere in Hollywood could have written that script. Here's a guy 3 years after blowing out his Achilles, right? And any other guy would have walked away after that probably. Already had 5 championships, God knows how much money in the bank, but he absolutely would not let an injury define when he would leave the game. And then to see him accomplish that, literally with no lift left in his legs, but some divine intervention, that ball was going in every time he shot it.
That's right.
It was unbelievable. And I spent the whole day with him from early in the morning. I went down to Newport to his office. He was having meetings at 9 o'clock in the morning in his office on his last game. Came up to LA with him and spent the whole, obviously, behind the scenes preparing and after the game. And it was a magical, magical night. So I without hesitation, I have to point to that.
Yeah, that's a great one, Andy. And I'm going to come back and spend some time on Kobe and your relationship with Kobe, which was really unique. Mm-hmm. And I watched a few things, the two of you together, mm-hmm. and the things he had to say about you, the observations. We'll come back to that. So give me a moment.
Yeah.
Where have you been? Or I'm sorry, let me repeat that. Where have you not been that's high on your list to travel to?
Well, I had never been to South America. In all the travels I've done for the NBA, multiple times around the world, never went to South America until I met my wife about 17 years ago, and she's from Argentina, living in LA. So I got exposed to the Argentine culture. Her family has a place in Punta del Este, Uruguay, which is amazing. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it is an incredible beach community. Has an artist community right next to Punta, which is really amazing. The food, the culture, everything about it. So that was very eye-opening and wonderful for me. There's a couple of places I've been having some weird hankerings to go to Antarctica, only because I got to tell you, my good friend Nick Oot. Nick is one of the most famous photojournalists in history. Nick shot the famous Napalm Girl photo during the Vietnam War. Okay, Pulitzer Prize winner. Nick just spent, I think, 2 weeks on a ship in Antarctica. I don't really like the cold, quite honestly, but the penguins were pretty cool. But I'll tell you, the one place, Brad, that has always stuck in my craw has been New Zealand for some reason. And nobody's ever asked me this question, but I got to tell you, every time I drive into LAX, Air New Zealand, this is a weird thing, but Air New Zealand is in Terminal 2, and it's the first plane I always see. It's like there's an Air New Zealand plane. Somehow it's calling me. So it's
an omen.
Yeah, it is, right? So at some point I got to get down there. I've heard only great things about, both islands down there. So I got to get down there.
Well, somehow, and I have no idea how I know this, but if you ever do go there, one of the Commodores lives in New Zealand. So
awesome.
You might have to ask around. We'll check with Lionel before you go.
I will be knocking on doors, man. Of course.
So, Andy, best advice you've been given? Anybody ever pull your coat and tell you something really that stuck with you?
Oh, yeah. Where do you want to start? The top shelf for me has got to be, don't let anybody blow out your light. I have a very close friend who has helped me in many, many areas of my life. And when I was going through the toughest of times, he would just shake me and say, look, man, you own your power. Don't let anybody blow out your light. And I try to pass that on, try to kind of live that in my life, kind of pass that on to my kids too. I have 3 adult kids. And, I see them struggling, and I see what other people might be thinking, feeling about them or myself even. My wife and I have this conversation too. Can't let that influence how I feel about myself. So that's basically sort of the subtext of don't let anybody blow out your light. Is not let anybody, really what anybody else thinks about you influence how you feel about yourself. So that's my bottom line advice.
That's a great one, man. I love that. You know, my wife, I often call her my Angelo Dundee. You remember Angelo and Sugar Ray's face in the corner? You're blowing it, kid. You're blowing it when he against Hearns. And she gets me with that sentiment when I tend to get down on myself or I didn't do something as well as I thought I should have, and it bums me out. You know, she can do that to me. So it's a version of what you said, but that inspiration that stays with you is awesome. Last one of these. Who, past or present, Andy, would you most like to host at an intimate dinner party?
Well, I mean, to sit down and have dinner with Bruce and Patty, Bruce Springsteen and his wife Patty Scalfa would be amazing. Barack and Michelle Obama, amazing. In the sports world, there's a lot of people that have crossed my path, your path. Your good friend Denzel, such a fascinating guy to me. Man, I can't really think of one person in sports that I haven't talked to that I really would love to. I guess Sugar Ray Leonard, I'm really fascinated by him. I shot him very early in his career, and I see what he's doing now. Would love to sit down with Tom Brady. Honestly, maybe he'll have a little more time now. You never know. but yeah, those are the ones, man. That would be a heck of a dinner party.
I'd say, yeah. Let me cater it for you, so at least I get to participate some way or another.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. So let's jump in, Andy. How you doing, man?
I'm good. You know, thank God, COVID hasn't hit me yet personally. Everyone in my family's had it, and somehow I've been dodging and weaving, doing rope-a-dope or something. I don't know. I might actually have had it and not known it, but I've stayed healthy. Things are good, Brad. They were not good for a while. You know, on March 10th, 2020, we were going gangbusters. You know, my company's really busy. Like you said in the intro, we do everything that happens in the arena and the theater next door, sometimes multiple events in a day, games, you know, concerts, all that stuff. March 11th, the next day, literally everything stopped and didn't come back. I mean, it really didn't come back until basically this past September. I was fortunate. I was able to go to the NBA bubble. You know, I hadn't worked by that point. That was in late August, so I hadn't worked in 5.5 months. So I went to the NBA bubble for 53 days. That's a whole other podcast, but that was quite the experience. I was thankful that, you know, the NBA offered for me to do that and that I was able to do that and stayed healthy throughout it. And we treaded water, quite frankly. Had to let, you know, a couple of people go, which was really sad. PPP helped for a little bit. But the blessing to the whole thing, Brad, I have to tell you, is that I was able, in my own mind and in my own sort of physical energy, to sort of shift to everything I've been putting a little bit on the back burner with Legends of Sport, which is the platform that supports the podcast. So I was actually in this space doing 2 podcasts a week by myself. My producer, Veronica, obviously wasn't coming in. She was working from home. And I didn't see Veronica, I think it was almost a year we didn't see each other in person, which was amazing. And then, you know, we were developing things that just came to a screeching halt when COVID hit, but myself and my partners were able to kind of put our energy towards that because I didn't have any photography work to do. So I was trying to make a positive out of a really, really tough negative. Financially, you know, we were able to hold on, which was good. And, you know, now we're back, and we're back almost 100%. Still a little hiccups here and there, but, you know, everybody's working again. You know, my crew is happy, and I'm able to pay their bills, you know, and pay them, and I'm happy about that.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, you know, as we come out of this, hopefully that we're coming out of it now, and, you know, we look at the collateral damage all around, you know, the stories are just going to continue to unfold, and this thing is going to reverberate for a while. Mm-hmm. And it affected, you know, a lot of levels of life. So good for you. And I'm happy to hear that things are on the upswing. Mm-hmm. So, Andy, I want to kind of start on a little bit of a funny note, because I want to talk about how we met. And as you mentioned, I've been friends with Denzel. Our friendship goes back to New York. We're both New Yorkers, so I've been friends with Denzel about 30 years. And he's had floor seats going back to the Forum and now Staples or Crypto Arena.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
It's going to take some work on that. And I would have the good fortune, as you mentioned, of joining him, for quite a few games when his wife wouldn't want to go or one of his kids wouldn't want to go. He would give me a call and I'd always be ready. Imagine that, Denzel asking to sit on the floor with him. Yeah,
Right.
I think I can make that. And I'm not quite sure how we met, but I would see you on the floor positioned, underneath the basket, and just watch you work, and along with a line of other photographers there. But you were constantly present. And at one point we said hello, and then next thing I knew, pictures started showing up in my email from your office, and the great shots of my wife and I, my son and I. And what a great way to make friends, man. Who's not going to love having somebody take cool pictures of them? You have a lot of friends, Andy?
I have a lot of friends, Brad. And you know what? I don't ask for anything other than you being happy to have gotten my photos. Honestly, it thrills me. I have witnessed and documented families, like the Jackson family, for example, that sits, about 8 seats down, up the sideline from where Denzel's seats are. I mean, I've been photographing that family, Steve and Ellen and their 4 kids, since they were little kids at the Forum. Now they're all adults. They have their own kids. They're married, and it's a thrill for me. I can mention so many other people that and your audience might not know, but probably have seen on TV at Laker game. Norm and Mary Pattis, who sit, dead center right next to the Laker bench, been fixtures. The late Joe Smith, one of my dearest friends, who was a legend in the music business. I mean,
Lou Adler.
Yeah, Lou Adler and Jack, of course. I mean, I remember shooting Jack and Lou, and they were sitting up in the stands in the '84 finals in Boston Garden, just getting hammered by the Celtic fans, and Jack just giving it right back to them, And it's a thrill for me. I mean, and let's not forget the super fan himself, Jimmy Goldstein, who has been a fixture way before I started. I mean, Jimmy's been watching NBA games for 55 years, something like that. Has floor seats for Lakers and Clippers, and you see him at everywhere, every single game. I mean, this guy, I don't even want to venture a guess how old Jimmy is, but during the playoffs, literally every night he's in a different city because he absolutely loves the game. And one of the most wonderfully warm, friendly, kind of humble guys, honestly, who lives in probably the most iconic house I'd ever seen in my life.
Incredible.
Yeah. So that's kind of been kind of a great sort of sidebar to my being there on the baseline, being able to help document people's experiences going to games. And it's just been fun for me.
Well, I want to ask you how, you got your start, but really, when did it start to come together for you, Andy? When did you feel like, you were locked in and this is where you were going to be? I mean, you've been at Staples for so long. When did that success first start to happen for you?
Well, I got to go back, Brad, to when I first started my love for photography when I was 14. My dad bought me a camera. I'm a Brooklyn guy, as you know. And I had never been to any of the national parks. I don't think I'd ever been west of New Jersey, at that point, honestly. And so my dad surprised me with a camera. We're going to go see all these national parks for a couple of weeks and have this great father-son trip. It was wonderful. I'd always been a sports nut. Shortest kid on my block, so I was, never going to be Bud Harrelson, who was my hero growing up with the Mets. I was never going to be Rod Gilbert, who was my hero for the Rangers, Didn't really go to Knicks games or wasn't into pro basketball, but I played a lot of basketball. I mean, we had a hoop on our garage, and we, had the schoolyard and all that stuff. So as, made my way to college, ended up at the University of Massachusetts, and didn't know if I wanted to be a photojournalist or possibly a documentary, cameraman, videographer, cinematographer. I didn't know, but I knew I wanted to do something visual. And I gravitated to the Daily Collegian newspaper, which is our campus newspaper, and I just fell in love with that whole vibe of doing assignments and being under deadline. And by the way, seeing my byline, which everybody else on campus saw, under a photo on the front page or on the sports page or whatever. And I got my feet wet, learning to shoot everything. Shooting everything from concerts and theater shows to sporting events to portraits. Jimmy Carter came through our campus, in my sophomore year for his presidential campaign. I had a front page picture of him. So I needed to, at that point, about halfway through UMass, I had to make a decision that if I'm going to make a career out of photography in some way, because by that point I decided on photography, I had to up the game. I had to go to a school that really could teach me everything, from the ground up, pretty much, technically, history-wise, the science of it, the art of photography. So I made my way to Pasadena, California, which to me was like going to the moon. And I went to a very prestigious school called Art Center College of Design, where I was told literally from day one that I would pick the wrong school. And why are you here? Like, we don't do sports photography. We don't do photojournalism here. You do advertising. You're going to do commercial photography. You're going to do fashion, shoot cars, make a lot of money, open a studio. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. And so I was discouraged, literally, Brad, from day one. But I had two teachers that didn't let me give up. And these two teachers are still in my life, still mentors, still wonderful friends. And, a Brooklyn guy, had that, like, Brooklyn moxie, edge, chutzpah, whatever you want to call it. And, you're in New York. If somebody tells you can't do something, you're absolutely going to prove them wrong. You're going to prove them wrong before you prove it to yourself, So I persevered, and doors started opening. I got introduced to some Sports Illustrated photographers by one of my teachers. And that really just opened the floodgates for kind of learning on the job, but I was also getting that technical training at school, which was really important. And I, still use that today, obviously, it's second nature to me. And I just decided, Brad, I got to marry these two passions together. I had photography here, I had sports there. What better way to go to a game than like sit courtside or be on, next to the dugout, or, be on the sideline of the football game or whatever, and actually get paid to be there. So I always joke with people, my friends Sharon and Joe Hernandez, them, they sit behind me at Laker games. They own Melissa's Produce. Two of the most wonderful, generous people. They sit behind me. You know what those seats cost at Laker games, right? And I always joke with them. I said, I have a better seat than you do. and somebody's actually paying me to be here, It's kind of funny.
I always make a point to buy the popcorn when Denzel and I are at the game. The least I can do,
exactly.
Andy? Yeah. So it's funny, man, because, you and I have a UMass connection. I went to UMass. I studied hotel restaurant management there.
And
I played basketball. Oh, yeah.
Well, hold on a second. When were you there, if you don't mind sharing that?
75 to 79. Now, my freshman year, I barely played any varsity ball, but then following years, I played quite a bit, and I was there, right to 79. I think you were there only until 78.
I was there
77.
From 75 to 78. Did you play with Alex Eldridge and
I did.
Derek Claiborne?
Yeah, Derek Claiborne. Yeah, in fact, we're and you know what? Maybe you could do this. We'll take this offline. But Mike Pyatt is up for Hall of Fame, UMass Basketball Hall of Fame, and we're all writing letters to get him nominated and get him in the UMass Hall of Fame. So
I would love that. I absolutely have to show you this, Brad. This was my very first published basketball picture. That's Alex Eldridge.
Is that Alex?
1975, right? In the Curry Hicks cage. Right?
Yeah.
So I keep this because this is where it literally all started. First published basketball picture.
Wow, man, that's fantastic. I love that.
Is that hilarious?
So so we have that in common. There's a sequence of photos that you ended up sending to me. So the Knicks were playing the Lakers at Staples, and I'm at the game with Denzel, and Spike Lee is seated maybe 20 seats from us. Denzel's seats are more towards the basket, the baseline, and Spike was more towards half court. So the Knicks win on a last second shot, I think by Nate Robinson, if I'm not mistaken. It's going back a few years. And Spike might have even had on a Nate Robinson Knicks jersey. So Nate hits this shot. Clock time expires. Spike comes running down the baseline to Denzel and tries to get Denzel, he sticks his hand out for Denzel to give him a pound and congratulate him on the Knicks win. Instead, Denzel leaves him hanging, puts his fingers up to his nose as if to say, that stunk. So Spike puts his hand over to me and I give him 5, right? You captured that sequence, Andy.
Wow.
In your photographs and sent that to me. I mean, in a series of like 3 photos, the whole thing.
That's hilarious.
And I have it on my wall. You know, when we're moving into a new house, and it's gonna be in my office on my wall. It's a great series of photos. But the question I have for you, and I've heard this come up in conversations that you've had with Magic and with Kobe. How do you anticipate a moment when Magic is going to go one way, everybody thinks he's going one way, and you know he's going another? How did you know Spike was running down that baseline and that those were the pictures you were going to get? What is it about the anticipation that factors into your judgment about what you shoot?
Great question, Brad. I mean, it's a multi-layered answer, but it first and foremost have to eliminate all distractions, completely eliminate them. So I can't be talking to somebody next to me, a TV guy or another photographer or a fan behind me or whatever. I have to be locked in, completely. I have to have peripheral vision so that when I'm looking through the viewfinder, the other eye is kind of seeing what's going on over here, or I can quickly take my eye away from the viewfinder and see, what's happening, on the bench, or if a fan is going bananas or whatever's going on. Celebrities are a huge thing, as you know. Have to always know where the celebrities are, get their reaction when that happens. There's a lot happening. So if I have a distraction, I'm doing a disservice to my employer, but to myself, because I need to be locked in. On the Magic question, it took a long time for me to learn his game. What's important to really understand the way I shoot, Brad, is I don't have the luxury of leaning on a motor drive. I can't push the trigger and 12 frames go off in a second and Magic's coming up and I can just pick, a frame out of that as the picture. And that's not to denigrate any of my friends who do that and make, amazing, captures of moments. I'm limited to one picture every 4 seconds. I can only click the shutter one time and then I have to count to 4 and then I can shoot again because I'm tied into this huge system of strobes, these big flashes that are up in the catwalk, that when I push my trigger, those strobes go off almost magically. They expose the picture in that moment, but then they have to recycle their energy back up because they're just huge, powerful, power packs. So you can't shoot, quickly. If you shoot once, during that 4-second period, you run the risk of literally blowing one of those strobe packs.
And you developed some of that technology,
yeah, right? I helped to. Well, it was there before me. I mean, the great Neil Leifer, the great John Zimmerman, those guys actually instituted that back in the 60s. They figured out how to light really dingy, grossly lit arenas like Boston Garden, the old Madison Square Garden with strobes. Walter Yost, of course, with his famous pictures that he did in many, many arenas. But I helped to, myself and others at NBA Photos, we helped to kind of refine it. And then we developed we meaning NBA Photos, developed a multi-camera remote system where you can actually fire multiple cameras on that single burst of strobe, all controlled by a radio frequency, which is, quite frankly, I don't understand how it works. But it was developed by these MIT grads who figured it out, and we R&D'd it for a couple of years, and now it's become the standard for 20 plus years. So I can shoot, LeBron going up for a dunk from 6 or 7 different angles. And then, by the way, the NBA then can sell that to 6 or 7 different entities because it's not the same picture. It's the same moment, but it's not the same picture. And that was all born out of Michael Jordan dunking like crazy back in the late 90s, and the NBA wanting to be able to maximize the opportunities of selling those dunks. So that's why we developed that technology.
Wow. Great. And maximize them they have, because the game, as we know, has grown worldwide. So I mentioned Andy Warhol at the top, who was famous for his Polaroids. And you have a really funny, it's a brief story, but a very funny story about going to shoot Magic Johnson's first Converse commercial. And you walk in with a Polaroid camera. Could you mind just setting that up and retelling that story, Andy?
Man, you dug deep into the history here. No, this is a great story. Magic and I still laugh about this. So I believe it was Magic's second year, which was essentially my rookie year. That's the year I really started shooting, although I did shoot in his rookie year. And my first real kind of serious professional deal, commercial shoot, was a Converse poster. He was filming a commercial, and this is the way it always works in my world, that the athlete is filming the video or the film commercial on a huge sound stage with like 900 people, on the crew, and there's little Andy over here with like a seamless, just begging for like 5 minutes, to get with the guy to shoot the national ad, the print campaign. So it's always a throw-in, right? Always was, it always will be. So with Magic, same scenario, I go to the sound stage, wherever it was, and they give me a little corner, and the art director had this incredible concept for this poster of sort of Magic sort of leaping over the world. So they were, they didn't have Photoshop in those days, but he drew it out, and it was cool. Magic had to make this move, and that was the shot, and they were going to put the earth, So I hired a stand-in who looked like him, same sort of, same height, kind of same body, basically the same skin tone. And the way that we always worked back in the film days was that you'd have the stand-in and you would do multiple Polaroids. There was a Polaroid attachment to the 120 camera, which at that time I was using a Mamiya RZ, which was like a bigger format camera. Put the Polaroid back on, right? And you'd shoot some Polaroids and you'd get everything nailed down. So when the athlete came in, you weren't wasting his time with dicking around with lighting, and blah, 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 and posing. You pretty much knew where you wanted. Magic comes in, super gregarious. Hey, Andy, what's going on? What are we doing? And I'm like, well, this is what I need you to do, Magic. And, I showed him the Polaroid from the guy who did it and everything. And he gets in position, and I go to do the Polaroid, and he goes, whoa, hold on. What are you doing? And I said, well, I need to do a Polaroid to see. Oh, no. He says, hold on a second. He goes, when I come on your set, we don't do Polaroids, okay? You be ready. You be ready.
You be ready.
Like he looked right at with the finger,
Right.
And I'm like, okay, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah.
Never did a Polaroid again.
That was it.
So when I did my podcast with him at his office, he literally fell out of his chair when I told him that.
I watched that, man.
I said, you literally could have
fantastic.
ruined my career at that point. But, I was up to it.
Yeah. But, your relationship, as I mentioned, with Magic was really, really special. I mean, your careers paralleled one another in the proliferation of the league. And, you were just there through all of those beautiful decades of basketball. And here's what Magic said. And your podcast, by the way, Andy, is fantastic. I mean, not just for sports enthusiasts, which I am, but it's really great, man. You come fully prepared. You've had Jerry West, Kobe, Phil Jackson, I mean, just all kinds of folks, and it's really, really enjoyable. Yeah. Legends of sports. But Magic said this about you, quote, his eye was really fantastic at knowing what he wanted, how he wanted it, and also what the fans wanted. And I think that's what made him such an incredible photographer and a guy who could take the best pictures. Then Magic went on to say, there's this famous photograph, Andy, you had that you took of Bird and Magic underneath the basket, right? Their arms interlocked, and it's really kind of metaphor, almost an allegory about their history and their story, right, together. And Magic said, "That's so Andy." Speaking of the photograph, quote, "That's so Andy, and so Larry, and so I, because Larry and I will be linked together." Also because of this man here, end quote, talking about you. So, man, that's high praise, man, from a pretty successful cat.
Oh yeah,
How's that
I mean
feel?
that just blows my mind. That a photograph, David Stern actually said about that photograph, which was from the '87 finals, where they're intertwined and neither guy is more dominant over the other, which is kind of unusual. He said that photograph helped define that era, the Magic Bird era, which is amazing. But to have Magic himself say that, to recognize that, it is high praise. I mean, it's almost embarrassing, but it thrills me. It thrills me when an athlete actually notices, understands. Magic, Kobe, the greats, they understood what it took for me. It wasn't an accident that picture happened. They understood my preparation. They understood what made me tick, what my Mamba mentality was as when Kobe and I started really collaborating. And, that means so much. I mean, I hope I got a few left in me, for this new generation. That's the challenge right now. Adam Silver had a great quote. He told me on the night of my Hall of Fame award, he said, "Andy, I think your best photos are in front of you." And that, with what
That's
Magic
funny.
said and what David Stern said, that is like fuel for me, because that keeps me going.
Yeah. Just going back to what Warhol said for a moment about, the photograph stays the same and the people change. I think about that iconic photo that you took of Michael Jordan in the locker room with his dad, him crying over the trophy. His dad has his hand on Michael's arm and is looking at him intently. And of course, we know the tragedy that, soon followed after that. But how do you feel about that, Andy? I mean, pictures do capture a moment that gets to live on, right? As we get older, we look at what we used to look like or where we were, and there's a real significance there in capturing those kinds of moments.
Oh, absolutely, Brad. I mean, a photograph is a moment in time that will never come back, right? You can't recreate it, especially in sports, news, photojournalism. It can't be recreated, and it helps to define all kinds of things. I mean, if you think about the civil rights movement, you think about the Vietnam War, you think about, even if we look at the George Floyd tragedy and the fact that somebody was there actually recording it, I'm just fortunate to have been put in a position, and have earned the position with the NBA to have been part of this incredible ride with a league that, when I started I think there were, 4 people working at NBA properties. Now it's a worldwide conglomerate, and to be sort of part of that story. And Andy Warhol and Gordon Parks. I'm glad you mentioned Gordon Parks. There was an exhibition in New York, which I'm kicking myself that I didn't see when we were in New York recently, but. What he was able to document, Howard Bingham, my friend Howard, late Howard Bingham, who was Muhammad Ali's personal photographer, but more importantly, his friend. If we didn't have Howard's photos, we might not know Ali's story, from beginning to end. With Kobe, with me, the same thing. I mean, there was so many things that happened behind the scenes that he was generous enough to trust me to document. That now that he's no longer here, how would we have known any of that stuff? Nobody saw it except me. So thank God I had that opportunity, and we were able to do our book together.
On Gordon Parks's quote about the photograph is so much more important than the photographer, I know what he's saying, and he has had a similar humility as you do. You're pointing your lens outward, and your world is about focusing on what's going on out there, not what how people are perceiving you. But Kobe, Magic, these two, from what I get from watching your podcast, Andy, there was a unique bond and a unique relationship that you had with them. In fact, Kobe talked about your iconic photo of Michael Jordan boxing out somebody, and for the poor guy he's boxing out, nobody, I don't know who that was, maybe you can recall, but Kobe describes in detail the way that Michael was boxing this person out, and Kobe was 12 and had that poster, right?
Yeah.
And your relationship with him, that you collaborate on this New York Times best-selling book. I watched the broadcast of you two when you went to his office and talked with him, and he talked about how he studied your pictures and how that helped his game. Man, you said that no other player had ever really kind of elaborated about that to you. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, no other athlete anywhere had ever said to me that my photos helped them define their game, improve their game, whatever. When Kobe told me the very first time I met him, he was 18 years old at Media Day 1996. He said, "Well, I know who you are because I had all your posters in my room." I sort of took that as, okay, that's cool. His kids, was a basketball fan, had my posters, but not until years later. I mean, he was still playing, so it had to be about 17, 18 years later, where he started asking me for photos of what he called his muses, Isaiah, Magic, even Bird, some of the big guys. And then I questioned him. I said, what's up with that? He goes, well, I look at these pictures because they help me understand how they played the game so I can improve my game. So then it came full circle, like that offhand comment that he made, in 1996. He was at 12 years old. He's studying. It's not just a pretty picture of Michael Jordan dunking. He's looking at Michael's body language. He's looking at Michael's muscle tone. He's looking at his expression on his face, everything. He's breaking it down like a science experiment. So when the
position of his arm against the other player's body.
Absolutely. Oh, that's right. Yeah. So that's how Kobe learned how to play defense, or learned how to box a guy out. So when we started doing our book together, and he wanted to, the book is divided into process and craft. So he's talking about the craft part, the actual basketball, playing part of the book. He's breaking down photos like I had never seen before. In fact, the very first picture in the craft section, he's D'ing up Michael Jordan and has his arm on Michael. And Kobe's caption that he wrote for the book said, "Everything I'm doing in this photo is wrong." Right? Now, who would do that in their own book, first of all? But he wanted to teach a young basketball player, a coach, a parent, whatever, whomever, that I can see what I'm doing wrong in this picture, and I learn from it, right? Now, I'm looking at a picture of the young Kobe and, the veteran Michael Jordan. I'm thinking, wow, that's a cool picture. You get these two guys together. That's not how he looks at it. He looked at it as breaking down everything going on. And then he went and listed like the 7 things that were wrong in that photo. To the point, Brad, where we started making prints for him, like 8x10 prints, and giving him a Sharpie, right? And in the book, he actually, you can see it, we reproduced it in the book. He's writing and circling stuff on the photo and noting what's going on there. Like, where am I looking? Why am I looking here? Or see how this, see how, D Wade took the fake and then I'm going to go this way, or whatever, And, the guys who were his defensive nemesises, the Bruce Bowens and the Sean Battiers, he loved breaking down those guys' games because that's how he did it, through photos and video, of course. And this is a guy who watched, thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of video. He'd be the only guy awake on the plane, after a game, and we're flying to another city. There'd be one light on, and it would be his, and he's watching game tape. So just fascinating.
You know what else really touched me too, Andy, in your conversation with Kobe was, and Magic touched on this too, and this goes to the trust that that these guys had with you, that was really gained over the years. But he detailed how you set up, your ladder, your camera, how early you got to the arena. He was watching you when you were watching him. And his appreciation for your preparation made him feel like you two spoke the same language automatically. And I think that helped to, really create that bond. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's kind of crazy because my biggest concern always is not to distract the guys, not to stand out, So the fact that he's noticing, like, oh, by the way, Andy was here before I got here, or that I'm out there putting my remote cameras up, or whatever I'm doing, just shows you how his radar was always up. He was noticing everything. I might have thought he was locked in and he's just caring about what he's doing in the moment, but that wasn't the case. And that was very revealing about him, to say the least.
Yeah. I know as a friend of yours, man, how do you measure the impact of a Kobe Bryant?
Well, like anybody, who's important in your life, who's no longer here, but even if they are, it's how they impact everything in my life. How the relationship made me a better person, how it might have made me better at my craft, how that relationship influenced, how I treat other people, because they're setting an example. Magic always and still does treats people like they're the only person in the room. He'll come in, he'll look you right in the eye, he'll shake your hand, he cares. Kobe was the same way. Some athletes are not, some celebrities are not that way. But I really felt like he respected what I did, Magic as well, and a lot of people. I mean, I just want to single the two of them out. But and that means a lot because, like I said, I like to just sort of be a fly on the wall most of the time. But when the athlete is recognizing, that, like Kobe said to me, he said, I knew that we were going to be bonded because you're as crazy obsessed with what you do as with what I do, So we had a lot of laughs about that during the making of the book, because I'd be showing him pictures and he knew exactly what he wanted to talk about in the book. My job was to find photos that supported what he wanted to write about, and that was a huge challenge. And he would point out stuff in photos that I had no idea what was going on, And like, we're looking at a picture of Bruce Bowen, right? And he's doing he's making a move. It's a still picture, right? So he's about to make a move on Bruce. He knew exactly when that happened, what point in the game that happened. He knew what happened after that photo. Like, how do you remember? He goes, well, that's what I do.
Right. Yeah. He made that clear in the podcast that there wasn't much room. Family, basketball, and basketball.
Yeah.
That was kind of his focus. So
yeah.
As we're starting to wind down a little bit, Andy, and you probably hate this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, and maybe you don't hate this question, but is there a favorite photograph of yours? I know Sports Illustrated was like, the cover of Sports Illustrated was a lifelong goal for yours, but what is there one photo that you would say this is the one?
Well, yeah, I know, Brad. I mean, yes, I do get asked that a lot. I kind of always point to the Michael Jordan holding the trophy photo from '91, his first championship. If I'm remembered for one picture, way down the line, Neil Leifer, God bless him, has probably photographed 500 iconic photos that we could all point to. But if he's remembered for one picture, generations from now, it's the Ali over Liston, in '64, which literally is the most iconic sports photo ever taken. If I'm remembered for one, it's got to be the Jordan holding the trophy. It just meant so much. At that time, it meant a lot, but it's just taken on such a significance so many years later, and 6 championships. And, Michael, this generation never saw Michael play. Michael Jordan is like, Babe Ruth to them. So, for all of us who did see him play, and even this generation of players didn't play with Michael Jordan. There's no player in the NBA today who played with Michael Jordan. So, think about that.
That's something to think about.
Played against him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's starting to happen with Kobe as well. There's only a handful of guys left So that's my long answer to your question.
No, good answer. And so, Andy, I'm curious with, the proliferation of iPhones and, at the end of every arm, there's a phone these days with a camera.
Yeah.
And, the increased volume of photographs. I mean, we're going to be the generation that, from now into infinity that, over documents our lives. Does that make your job any harder to capture that photo?
No. And I'm thrilled that the whole world, really, every person on the planet who has a phone in their pocket, or in the pocketbook or their glove compartment or wherever, is a photographer. I mean, you're seeing people in all walks of life in every society pulling out their phone, taking beautiful pictures. My wife, God bless her, she's a lawyer, not a photographer, but she takes really cool pictures. Who would have had that opportunity during when I first started? You had to invest in equipment. You had to learn photography. That's a whole other conversation with the fact that there's now been a shortcut to becoming a photographer. But I love it. I love the fact that my 13-year-old, when she was 2, knew how to operate an iPhone literally and take pictures of flowers and stuff. But from my standpoint, and the rest of us who do this professionally, hasn't really changed much, honestly. I mean, the technology has changed 180 degrees, of course, but I still approach my craft, I approach my job, my profession, the way I shoot games exactly the same way that I did, 40 plus years ago when I started out. I still prepare. I think about my craft that way. Yes, I mean, it's more immediate. I can see what I shot in the moment. It takes kind of the fun out of the anticipation of waiting for film to get developed, which it used to drive me crazy, but I actually miss that. There's a lot of self-gratification right now in the moment. Oh yeah, I just got that picture, or guess what? I just missed that picture. And there's a lot of people looking over my shoulder now that I didn't have before. Like my cameras are all tethered back to an editor in New Jersey. So literally, as I take a photo of LeBron dunking, the editor is receiving it probably 3 seconds later. Wow. Before LeBron has even gone back down the court. The editor is editing it and captioning it and getting it out to the world. We didn't have that back in the day. But again, I approach my craft exactly the same way as I did in day one.
So Andy, of the young crop of players now, I think of a guy like John Morant as somebody that must be a photographer's dream. Who do you like? Who do you have your eye on?
I'm glad you mentioned him, because my first experience with John Morant was he came into what was then Staples Center, played again. I think it was against the Clippers in his rookie year, and he went up for a dunk, and I cut his head off. Because I didn't expect this dude to go up that high. He literally, his head was, the box around behind the basket.
Yeah,
behind
the square.
His head was in the box. I mean, I had no idea. And so I learned my lesson with him. He's a thrill. I wish I got to shoot him. My good friend Joe Murphy is the Grizzlies team photographer, and I just salivate every time I see photos that Joe shoots. Because I remember, the young Kobe. Kobe was a dunk machine in his early years, and I just remember how wonderful that was, shooting him every game. But Ja, amazing. I still love shooting Steph Curry. Wouldn't call him, the new crop. He's kind of part of the old new crop. Excuse me. I have LeBron, of course, in front of my lens in year 19, which is insane. I get to shoot Melo. I didn't really get to shoot Melo that much in his career, which is wonderful. And one of my favorite players ever is Russell Westbrook. I mean, his game for a photographer is like a dream to have that gift. So it's fun. And then, I can't forget about my Clippers. I mean, Paul George, one of my favorite players. I was there when Paul had that horrific, broken leg incident, and to see him come back. And, I love shooting the Clippers and being around that team. So I'm blessed, man. I'm blessed that these guys they just keep getting better and more athletic. And that's a challenge for me to, stay sharp and stay focused, as we talked about at the beginning.
Well, lucky for us, those that love the sport get to continue to enjoy it. So, Andy, I mean, you have access to the championship locker room, and in some cases, the team who lost. Floor seats for an NBA game is a thrill, even for non-NBA fans. But you are literally sitting on the floor. So my final question for you: how cool is your job?
Well, I've had people tell me it's a pretty cool job, and it is. I gotta say, it is, and it's for guys mostly. Guys say, "Wow, you got the cool." I mean, I have a pretty good job, but you got the coolest job, and I've had some pretty influential guy friends tell me that. But bottom line, Brad, it's a job. I have to produce. I have to stay and continue to produce at an extremely high level, or else there's a lot of young guns out there that waiting to take my place. I know that. I work for some great people at the NBA. My direct boss, Joe Amati, who I've been working with over 30 years. He's wonderful. He has given me the liberty to actually work less games this year, so I stay fresher and sharper. I don't get fatigued from traveling, all that stuff. And I'm grateful they still want me around, man. What can I say?
They're smart people. The podcast is Legends of Sport, and I think we can see it on YouTube and hear it at iHeart. The host is my esteemed guest today, Andy Bernstein. Andy, I'm a huge fan of your work, the podcast, and of you, the man. So thanks so much for taking the time today, man. I really appreciate it.
Brad, it's so great to just connect with you, man. But on this platform, which I adore, I think you do a great job, and so great to talk to you, man, and see you. I hope that I see you courtside soon. You got to tell Denzel to come back. I know he's been busy doing other things, but he's got to come back and bring you with him at some point.
Yeah, well, from your mouth to his ears. Andy Bernstein, thank you so much, man. See you soon.
Thanks, Brad.
Yep. So welcome, everyone, to the segment of our program we call How We Move. My dear friend, Ambassador Shabazz, looking lovely this afternoon. What's happening, Ambassador?
It's all happening. It's happening fast.
Coming at you quick, huh?
Yeah, I'm trying to keep up. I don't know if giggle biloba or whatever, kale,
Quicker than a photographer snaps his camera on automatic fire.
What did he say? Something, but he can do 4 every some odd seconds or something.
Yeah, you know what killed me is that he said he could take a picture of LeBron dunking, and it would be in New Jersey being developed before LeBron crossed half court.
Well, yeah, that's that new technology, right?
Yeah, man.
Photographer, I don't use that rapid fire stuff. I still like to feel the camera in my hand, and I've gotten into the digital camera, but I actually like to be part of the process. So I'm still kind of old school about it, but I love knowing and watching them own. That's what I loved listening to him about. He just owned it. When he said he could not be distracted, there was no room. He's living in the moment of each thing in motion, the peripheral, the circumference, the 360 degrees. That was cool. And I got it. I understood being in a zone, and we are.
What really touched me too. Yeah, what really touched me too was, you think of guys like Kobe and Magic as being, obviously they've got a lot to focus on playing at such a high level in front of, thousands of people and in some cases millions of people. But the intimate bond that they formed with Andy and the trust and the respect for how they saw, him prepare for his job. I was really touched by that.
Well, but he lives it, right? So when someone is that authentic, no matter who, what, when, and their job is not just merely employment, but it is really their soul's voice, right? It's the way they communicate and capture and translate, transmit, pass it on to us. You get to almost feel like they're not in the room. Your trust surrenders so much that you don't feel like you have to pose for a shot. you trust that they'll catch you in your best, which is really, really great. And I think about my father had a photographer, Robert Haggins. I mean, many people photographed him, but Robert Haggins actually left his job at the Post to come spend time with my dad and got the shots that mattered, the shots that were not going to distort his image. And so me growing up with the likes of Gordon Parks, who was my sister's godfather, or Richard Avedon, who was a fashion photographer, but also kind of bordered activism, in capturing images and people. And is Monita Sleet, who was known for those iconic shots that we'll forever know in the Chronicles of Ebony magazine. Pete Souza, who Andrew Bernstein, Pete Souza, who Mr. Bernstein acknowledged, and notwithstanding Howard Bingham, whom I knew personally as well, and as a buddy alongside Ali. And they were thick as thieves. Certainly he chronicled everything captured on film, but they were brethren. They were soul brethren. And to get to experience imagery from pre-Muhammad Ali days. I mean, he captured him in the clay days, right? It was really quite powerful, their union and what we get to see forever after through all of these photographers and more, notwithstanding Andrew Bernstein.
Yeah, let me ask you, when you look at, because we touched on this, and I think it was Gordon Parks who had said this. I had quoted him about people change, but the photograph remains. When you look at old photographs, I know you were very close with Howard Bingham and also the Ali and his family. And when you look at photographs of your dad, your mom, the folks that have come in and out of your life, that the still moments that got captured, what does that conjure for you? Do you feel differently every time you look at those photos? Do you not like to look at them? Do you love looking at them? How do you feel?
I think the heart that takes the right photograph is something you can always live with. I mean, it takes you right to the moment and that time. I remember saying to Harry Belafonte when he was turning 50, because we know he just turned 95, he's turning 50. And I said to him, he looks handsome. I was saying, you look great at 50. He says, oh no, I don't like taking pictures. I said, look, my father's older than you are. He said, but your father looks good in his shots. Because my father, sad as it may be, my father's last photo, he was 39. So he was immortalized as a young man.
Right.
So I had not thought about that because my dad is my dad is my dad. But it's like how people see themselves and how they want to be captured, and then letting go to simply be captured, to entrust someone to photograph you. I don't like being photographed, but I'm a photographer myself, so I can shoot and not invade. I love to get feelings and images that are not posed, that are moments and movements in a person's experience in that a given time. But I don't like being in front of the camera at all. So I wonder if Andrew Bernstein can pose for a shot, when you live in it to capture others, And I think that's the difference. I would imagine that most photographers don't want to be in front of the camera at all. You have Tasha. My dad was a photographer as well. And while he was captured, he also would rather, not be in the shot. Once he was done, he would always kind of wave his hand and say, okay, we're on. We're off to another thing. But I love when he had the quote. I love when he quoted, don't let anybody blow out your light. He shared that with his children. Wow, that's like really big. And I think we all need to ask ourselves, what does that mean for one another? And how do you protect that? How do you identify what your light is so that you can protect it, so that you make sure that no one, blows it out? I mean, that's a real toughie. That takes me to people in my life right now as they're trying to discern how to take care of their souls. And these are people in charge of many, whether it's households or in their professional positions, tuning out of social media, shutting it off for a minute, leaving their phones somewhere else, turning off their computer, not checking their LinkedIn. And a few people recently have asked me how I can help them go someplace where they can not blow out their light, right? Or to recharge their light. And one person, while the correspondence was online, I had to dial him because I could feel the cry through the social media, through the medium online, and to have a conversation. Say it's okay to want to go someplace. It's okay to shut down. It's okay to recharge, and it's okay to do it alone. So you come from a family and you're responsible for so many other people. You can actually treat yourself to this, and I'd be happy to determine where you wake up and how you end your day and how you feel those 3 or 4 days to do that. And another person just buried 2 parents, neither expected, and is in charge of quite a large mission, not just employees, but has a lot at stake, and just needs to take off a week. And I said, if we can't take off a week and allow our staff and team, you have the wrong team, right? You really need to not feel like you can't let go for a minute. And so who do you have around you as you're part of your support system? So what do you do to shut down?
I think I try to just grab moments during the day. I don't know that I can ever successfully, completely disengage days on end. Yeah, I enjoy feeling my feet on the ground and that I'm making progress towards what I'm doing. But I am, to your point, I'm trying to focus more on the journey rather than the end goal as the objective. And I think that's a big help. But, I wanted to go back to something that came up when you were talking a little bit there. And I want to connect self-image to, when I think of, the era that your dad had his picture taken so often. And, of course, Ali, it's amazing to me that Harry Belafonte ever felt he could take a bad picture, which, one of the most handsome guys of all time. How self-image is cultivated these days on social media, right? We show the best angle, the best time, the best night, the best, everything. And it's not a true depiction. And for others who are gazing at us through that lens, if that's the image that if you're trying to always show, just how great your life is and how good you look in the perfect light, it's not a true reflection of life. No, nor is it intended to be, maybe, but I guess that's how photography has kind of changed a little bit in terms of self-perception.
I think now it's more cosmetic as opposed to capturing the soul, the movement, the engagement, the interaction, right? So now, it amazes me how many people can be caught off guard and still do that thing over the shoulder with the pouty lip. I'm just thinking, that's good. You catch me, I got an eye closed. I'm ducking. You can see me with a blur. So was she trying to escape the shot? I think people are learning, though. They're pausing. I think they're feeling the overwhelming consumption of engagement. I think people are learning because some of the people that are saying to me, I signed off for a few days are actually young people as well. They just needed to not be bothered and not tune in, not determine how many likes they have based on people they don't know, So how do people treat themselves? Because the young lady I had dinner with last night said, my team is great. They can do it. Can I not check in? Can I take this downtime and not check in with my office? So how do we entitle ourselves to those moments of pause? She's going to try to take a week off. She needs it. But when you talk about grabbing parts of your day, I think we all need to figure that out. It's like people who stop and start their day with a meditation. It's like that's Ruby and Uncle Ossie. No matter what time they got up, you didn't see them until they saw each other. How's that? Until they saw each other, until they broke bread, until they had breakfast together. Breakfast could be 8 a.m., could be 11 a.m., but they didn't engage the world until they fellowshipped with each other. So it's just determining where you need your ground zero to be fortified so that you can engage the rest. There's a place in Cincinnati that I had come across, and it's not too far from where I am. I haven't been there myself. It's called Grace and Grit. Online, it would be graceandgritskin.com. And it's just a regional spa, happens to be Black owned. They call themselves Spa with a Purpose. And what I loved is that they also had a component that addressed those who who are either themselves suffering from cancer or surviving with cancer. And they also do it for the caregivers. So they call it warriors and caregivers for those who are surviving the journey of cancer. And they offer the whole spa treatment, and they just language it as what love does. That's the category on their website. And so if you can find those balances, that it's not just for the one that's ailing, but for the one loving the one that's ailing, and how the restoration has to be cyclical amongst us so that we can all be healthy enough to support one another. So,
and what's it called?
It's called Grace and Grit. There's another Grace and Grit in South Carolina that's a restaurant. This is Grace and Grit, spelled out fully, skin.com, graceandgritskin.com. And, it's just, I'm just exploring things online that I want to journey to, and listening to young people create these initiatives in the last couple of years, and getting their degrees in Ayurveda or certifications in Ayurveda or as masseuse, reflexologists, things that they didn't plan on before now, but we're realizing the soul needs to be touched somehow or the other. So I really dig what they're doing.
Well, before we sign off, since we were on the subject of photography with Andrew Bernstein, I'm wondering, is there a picture, a photograph that is dear to you that you think of as maybe one of your favorite shots of a scene, of a person, of an experience that conjures up something nice for you?
For an individual, do you mean personal or just
anything? Any image that comes to mind? I know again that you and Howard Bingham, who cracked me up on a regular basis whenever you brought him around, he was just a great guy. But I know he took some just phenomenal. I mean, Ali was hard to not capture in a magical way because he was just such a magical guy. But when hanging around Bingham, does anything come to mind of yours that or any photographs that you remember that would stand out for you?
I wouldn't say single photos because I love black and whites. I love sepia. I mix those when I'm working on images myself. I'll take a color photograph and move the colors around to see, do I feel it more in color, or does the information transmit better in black and white? So what I loved with Howard Bingham, he would always say that he loved standing in the distance to watch other people with Ali. And every now and then you'll see, if most people don't know what Howard Bingham looks like, but every now and then he's Waldo in the shot. Somebody else caught him, right?
Right.
And you're watching this other young baby face, and what brought the two of them together to be so inseparable that they departed this earth in the same year, one in June, one in December. And we figured, just like people who are just mated, that they were, what was the purpose to stay? I mean, he has children and grandchildren, but we knew he was heartbroken because I think they were together from 61, and their whole lives, highs and lows, were together. So I can't think of a single shot, but I just know, because I've lived in and around some of these moments that were captured, it just takes me to a place as if it were in that moment.
Well, as someone who has seen many photographs of you, I can attest to the fact that I have never seen you take a bad picture.
Oh, yeah. You're just saying that because you like me.
And it's true. I do not lie. Ambassador Shabazz, how we move. We know how you move.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. We'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Corner Table Talk is hosted by Brad Johnson, produced by Brad and Linda Ailes Johnson. Theme music, Life Goes On by Bryce Vine. Executive producer, Ken Johnson. Find the Corner Table Talk podcast wherever you get your podcast. Follow, subscribe, rate, and leave a comment. Corner Table Talk is a Mean Old Lion Media production.